And that introduction was basically what would War Thunder look like with an F-18, although Microsoft Flight Simulator does a better job of cloud rendering, obviously, but hey, it's a pipe dream, I suppose. Welcome yourselves to the April Fool's prediction for 2022. We've had a diverse history of vehicular-based combat in weird and wacky ways, and Guardian Entertainment have provided us with some of the most entertaining and possibly best events out of any video games company out there. They really do treasure their April Fool's events, and then we've had a whole host of them, from walking tanks, submarines, to giant snails. The list just goes on, and it's been fascinating to sort of see the development journey there. Unfortunately, it's quite hard to really determine whether or not each event is a testing bed, whether or not they are actually usable for testing new systems or new mechanics that the game could possibly have. But we've had such a diverse range of events, it's really quite hard to see what could possibly come next. Of course, we've had the inflatable tanks, which was a knock on World of Tanks, essentially. There were the walkers, I mentioned those just previously. There were several other vehicle-based, just space battles and UFOs, and just the list goes on. But my favourite event in recent memory was actually the Golden Hind, and this was way back when I believe they were testing the buoyancy and the gun mechanics / the wave mechanics in the first ever mass adoption of naval forces. Granted, we're all in the same kind of vessel, so it was kind of interesting to sort of see, and this one really was just so much fun, and they really put a lot of effort into them. The events themselves have unique music, unique titles, different text, different fonts. There's all sorts of different things that you can expect to see. In the modern day conflict, they showed off and debuted smoke clouds and obviously a whole host of other things, well as modern day vehicles. There was also helicopters and a bunch of other things. That again was just telling you the direction in which War Thunder was heading, but it isn't exactly clear cut. We've had 9 of these events so far, technically 10. There has been flying ponies, there's been a bunch of other ones as well. Last year alone we had 2 events, being Tailspin and Warfare 2077, I believe it was called, in which one was a knock on the cartoon TV series from the 90s, and the other was a ground-based, interestingly, I guess, programmed countermeasures, or I want to say it was not electronic countermeasures, but what's the equivalent of tanks? I think it's active protection system, something along those lines. And we have seen those recently on the dev servers. So it is speculative that there will be some form of electronic countermeasures in this current April Fool's event. It's been confirmed that the April Fool's event is actually going to be a unique event this time. They have brought back 2 other previous sort of game modes, that being the tank soccer and obviously Tailspin again, so you can enjoy those if you missed out on last year. I certainly hope that we don't get something naval-based where it's either frigates or destroyers or surface-to-surface missiles, because that is another thing that really sort of hasn't been touched on, unless it's player, carriers or something like that. Or what kind of other vehicles are left in game? Maybe Humvees with tows, or maybe even artillery, like for example Sturm Tigers and direct artillery machines in that regard. But again, it's really hard to say. With the new engine upgrades for the Dagor engine that they've been doing, or Guardian Entertainment has been doing recently, it makes me think that they might have an event featured around World War I vehicles. Now, why would you test World War I vehicles? Well, specifically textures, obviously models and visual models would obviously be your testing. Wouldn't be anything like ponies, but the reason why World War I vehicles don't work in War Thunder is purely because of their fragility. Like, how do you actually make a mechanic in that? Because everything is so fragile, and everything is rather slow and cumbersome. So, again, it's probably hearsay, but I don't think that will be the case. Unless we get some sort of flying submarines, or maybe even some blimp or sort of steampunky sort of events that we have seen in the past. But again, those have sort of been done. It could be space battles this time, although we also had those a couple of years back as well. We also had UFOs. So again, how can the Guardian developers surprise us and not alert us to what they might also be testing? Obviously, each event has included a crafting event in the last couple of years, as well as 2 separate sort of game modes, which they, well, 2077's case, they also had Tailspin playing at the same time. So reality is there was quite a lot on offer, and maybe they'll do a split event type like they did in previous years. Again, it's hard to say. My favourite one from recent memory, obviously, was the Golden Hind, but the other one I really quite enjoyed was this UFO one. Strange dialect and just interesting mechanics made it really possible to, I guess, launch torpedoes and underwater aerial lasers and all sorts of things, because this was just utterly fun. Obviously testing for the future case of VTOL aircraft, and a whole host of other guided munitions. But these types of game modes, these really tend to, well, just invigorate a lot of fun. It reminds me of like playing the game for the first time, just experiencing something new and something fanciful, if that's even a word. Still, like, it reminds me of the old days where, you know, you'd have fun playing a video game for a while and then, you know, just enjoy yourself, because these events were fresh and they were something that was looked forward to every year. That's something that a trademark of any other company wishes they could do, because obviously Gauge Entertainment's mass media coverage, when they do obviously publish a April Fool's event or type of event like that, gets mass media attention, even in mainstream media. So, you know, it is, for what it's worth, possibly the best thing that this company does outside of making War Thunder and a couple of other games and being a publisher, which it goes to show you that maybe they can or can't take a joke. I'm not sure where I'm going with this. Anyhow, there was a 2.7 data leak a couple of months back now, and in that it had a bunch of vehicles that are now previously actually a part of the current patches, which is fantastic to see. But they also had a bunch of civilian aircraft, and they also had a bunch of interesting other bits and pieces. I'll show you some screenshots right about now. So ultimately, my prediction comes down to something with these civilian aircraft. It could not be, it could also be Gen 4.5 jets, and maybe even F-18s or F-35s or something completely ridiculous. But these were spotted as a part of a sort of a pack of just different civilian aircraft, as well as the included coding for, well, I guess a bunch of different civilian aircraft that are quite interesting. Here's a Cessna 152 with floats, and there was a Hawaiian sort of map where you had to actually deliver cargo. So whether or not that will be the April Fool's event, I'm not entirely sure. But apparently it was going to be a standalone game like Microsoft Flight Simulator. And obviously we've got these funky looking sort of walker tanks, which were leftovers for what was supposed to be walker tanks coming to previous updates. At least April Fool's updates. These haven't been used, so whether or not we'll actually see them in action is another thing altogether. And really, they just look so crazy and out of the blue that I think these would be a bunch of fun. So why not have a little bit of fun with these? I don't know what they'd be testing, because obviously they have cross-out and they have a bunch of other games that they could cross-reference different things from, and you reuse other assets. For example, the jumper engines on that are from Star Conflict, one of another Gauge Entertainment games. So again, huge amount of variety here, and I'm really looking forward to what they could be adding. What do you think they are going to add? I personally think it's going to be something to do with either civilian aviation or World War I. But then again, throw my guess out the window, because obviously I've mentioned several different ideas that have been floating around, whether it's ship-to-ship missiles, whether it's bigger frigates or destroyers, and obviously all those modern sort of types of vessels, whether it's some sort of World War I testing, some Gen 0.5 testing, maybe some World War II submarine action, or something completely silly like a bathtub arena for vehicles. I don't know. There's plenty of things that you could do, it's just a matter of how they implement it, and they always do a good job of doing such, so there's no worry right there. Anyhow, obviously, as we've got about a week or so, it shall be seen whether or not there will be a data mine or some sort of vehicle entry list that comes out, and the data miners get a hold of it and show us actually what the event is about. However, the advent of electronic countermeasures, at least a pod discovered in a line of code this week, could indicate there could be something to do with electronic countermeasures. Again, it's hearsay, we'll have to wait and see. But thank you very much for watching today, and I really appreciate the support on recent videos. It has been a blast. I really do appreciate it. We've had fun playing around with some of the older April Fool's events. We've also had fun digging up some of the other things too recently. And I really enjoy talking about the April Fool's events, as it really sort of is a bit different from talking about regular War Thunder, because the what-if scenarios make for a generally entertaining time, unlike the misery that is the real game sometimes. Anyway, my name is Ash, thank you very much for watching, I'll catch you next time, bye bye.